Welcome to Alex Ayer's Maui, a video scrapbook of your helicopter adventure in paradise. First of all on our trip, we're going to be headed eastbound to the east end of Maui, the side that Haleakala Crater is located on. We'll climb aboard our jet-powered Hughes 500 helicopters to take a look at some of the most beautiful scenery in the entire world. Departing the Kahului heliport, all of these fields that you see under us are sugarcane. There's approximately 40,000 acres of it growing down here, and every year 300,000 tons of raw sugar gets harvested out of these fields. Now, sugarcane is a very long-growing crop that'll take anywhere from 18 to 22 months for it to reach maturity, and in the process it'll consume about 2,000 pounds of water to grow 5 pounds of sugarcane, and that'll produce only 1 pound of refined sugar. These beautifully sculpted fields in the background here are pineapple. Pineapple, of course, is one of the crops that Hawaii is most famous for. And like sugarcane, pineapple has a long growing season. It'll take anywhere from 10 to 14 months for it to ripen. Now, to kind of make up for the long growing time, once the plant is in the ground, it'll produce 3 successive pickings of pineapple before they have to go back in and plant the fields all over again. Heading out of the Central Valley, these are the Northern Shore Sea Cliffs, some of the most rugged scenery available here in this part of the island. There's a lot of pasture land that you see down here. Now, believe it or not, dollar-wise, the cattle industry is the second largest in the islands. We're going to head on downhill now for a closer look at how really beautiful this coastline is. This is Makaiva Bay, and the landmark known as Puka o Maui. Now, puka means hole. You'll see why in just a moment. There's a hole that goes all the way through this rock formation. You can see clear through to the other side. We're going to depart Puka o Maui and Makaiva Bay and head uphill into the rainforest, Maui's tropical rainforest. The majority of these trees that you see here in the rainforest are eucalyptus trees, the same kind as found in Australia. In fact, they were brought here from Australia. The average height of these trees, to give you some idea of scale, is 75 feet. We're coming up on the Honolulu Valley, the gateway to Ke'anai. Ke'anai is believed to be the first place that was inhabited in East Maui by those early Polynesian voyagers from the South Pacific Islands. Departing Honolulu, we're in the Kenai Valley in the very beautiful Kano Falls. And all the water coming down here is all from rainfall, many miles up the slopes of Haleakala Crater. Now, even though there hasn't been rain for 2 or 3 days, these waterfalls will still run. In fact, they run year-round. Lava rock is like a sponge and will absorb a tremendous amount of water, so it doesn't take rain, really, every day to make our waterfalls. Departing Kano, we head further across the rainforest to take a look at some more beautiful waterfalls. Not as big as Kano, but still very beautiful. We're going to be visiting the Wailua and Kopiliula streams. Now, as we get further down in here, we get a little closer look at the eucalyptus trees that grow here. And also, all of the ground cover that you see down here are ferns. There are a little over 100 different varieties of fern that grow in these rainforests and throughout the islands of Hawaii. There's 7 different varieties right in this one little pooled area. Now that we've taken a look at Kopiliula Falls, we're going to continue eastward across the rainforest on our way over to the part of East Maui known as Heavenly Hana. This is the part of the island that you come to when you want to relax. That's why they call it Heavenly Hana. That's the actual town that you see nestled up against the shoreline of the Hana Bay. Now, the big rock to the right of it is an old volcanic cinder cone known as Kawiki Head, and this is where Queen Ka'ahumanu was born. She was King Kamehameha's favorite wife and singularly most responsible for bringing about equal rights for women in the Hawaiian kingdom. Headed southbound, it's now time to head to the Kipahulu Valley and the 7 sacred pools. Now, just a word here about the 7 pools. In reality, there's about 20 pools out here, and the number can vary. It just depends on how much rain we've had. Typically in the wintertime, there are more pools. In the summertime, not quite as much when the water tapers off. We're going to take a look first of all at some of the lower pools, and these are very easily accessible by car. Once you've spent the 3.5 hours driving to this part of the island, it's a very short hike from a parking lot down to these pools. Now, let me warn you, the water is cold, and if you decide to take a dip, be prepared. But even with the coolness of the water, it is a very beautiful place to be and a very beautiful swim. Now, these are only part of the pools that include the 7 pools area. Further up the hill, if you're the adventurous type, after about a 45 to 55 minute walk, you come up against the Waimoku Falls, one of the major supplier of waters to the lower pools. The hike back here to Waimoku takes you to some very beautiful bamboo forests. We've got one more stop to make before we head up to Haleakala Crater. This is Maui's miniature Grand Canyon. It's known as the Mana Wainui Valley. Mana Wainui means powerful waters, and it's named for the waterfalls that you'll be seeing here in the back end of this valley. This is a 3,000-foot drop from top to bottom. Also, typically all over the walls of these valleys are feral ghosts. This part of the island has a very large population of them. Very sure-footed animals to be able to live in this kind of terrain. It's now time to leave Mana Wainui and head up to the top of Haleakala Crater, the world's oldest and largest dormant volcano. The name Haleakala comes from an old Hawaiian legend. It tells of the god Maui being approached by his mother Hina, the goddess of the moon, and she was complaining that there just weren't enough hours of daylight to do all the work that needed to be done. And this was because the sun's journey was so very rapid over these skies. So the god Maui climbed up to the top of this mountain, and in the darkness of early morning, he lay in wait. And as the sun god came racing across the skies of Maui, he lassoed him with a rope made from the fiber of coconut husks. And he refused to let the sun god go until he had promised to slow down. And this he did do, but for only part of the year. And that's why our summer days are longer. In the wintertime, the sun god goes back to his rapid flight across our skies. And ever since that day, this mountain has been called Haleakala, the House of the Sun. This is the Kaupo Gap lava flow. It's the only major one to have come from the southeastern side of Haleakala crater approximately 1100 years ago. Those are the volcanic peaks of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa on the Big Island. They're 14,000 feet above sea level, and as such, they're typically snow-capped in the wintertime. This cloud bank down here is very typical. Throughout most of the year, as the sun warms the morning air, the moisture starts condensing as it rises upslope and gives us these clouds. This is the interior of Haleakala crater. The floor of this crater is 3,000 feet lower than the highest point, which is the Red Hill Visitor Center. That's that point there in the background. That rises up 10,023 feet above sea level. The crater is 2.5 miles wide, 7 miles long, and it measures 21 miles all the way around the rim. All of these cinder cones here at the bottom of the crater were sites of lava flow once upon a time. The reddish color in the soil is due to a high concentration of iron oxide. All those little paths that you see down there are hiking trails. There's a network of 32 miles of them that lets you explore every inch of the interior. The volcano that eventually became called Haleakala first broke through the surface of the ocean some 800,000 years ago and began the long building process that gave us East Maui. West Maui, by comparison, is 1.5 million years old. And this used to be two separate islands. A channel of water lay between the two. And it wasn't until quite a few eruptions from Haleakala on the east and Eke and Pu'ukukui on the west side that it covered it all in and gave us the Central Valley. This collection of buildings here is known as Science City because of all of the research projects located here. Projects operated by the University of Hawaii, NASA, and the Air Force. This ridge line that's heading off toward the left of the screen is known as the Southwest Rift Zone. It was from this area that the last eruption of Haleakala took place in 1790. It actually didn't come out of the center of the crater, but from the side. And that lava flow formed the La Perouse and McKenna areas. Time now to head out of the crater, head downhill toward the Central Valley ahead of us, and on over to West Maui. It's time now to head over to the west side of Maui, starting off with some of the more popular areas there, where the resorts are located, the fun and games, the nightlife. This is Lahaina, an old whaling town. It was once the capital city of the state of Hawaii, and it retained that title until the capital was moved to Honolulu, over on the island of Oahu. Also, as in the Central Valley, sugarcane grows in abundance on this side of the island. We'll be continuing upward from Lahaina and be taking a look at the coast towns of Kapalua, Kaanapali, and Napili. Leaving civilization behind, let's take a look at some of the rugged beauty of the West Maui Mountains. This is the coastline, and it is quite a bit calmer than what we saw over in the east end of the island. The dirt here and the rock, quite a bit redder. Again, this is due to iron oxide. We'll be following the coastline for a little bit here, and then headed up into the hills. This is the entrance of the Honokohau Valley, and back into this valley is the second longest uninterrupted waterfall in the state of Hawaii. This is Honokohau Falls. You're looking at a run of 1,200 feet from the top to that first pool where we're hovering, and then another 900 feet to the valley floor below. As is the case with many of the sites in our island of Maui, the helicopter is the only way to be able to enjoy what the island has to offer. Hard to believe with so much primitive beauty here in such a very short space that within a matter of a minute civilization lies away. This is the top of the Keyhole Falls in the Waihee Valley, named Keyhole for the rock formations that you see there. It's shaped like a keyhole in an old-fashioned door. Time to take one last look at the island of Maui before we venture across water to take a look at another island, the island of Molokai. But first, some scenery of the Central Valley and the remainder of the northern shoreline. Now that we've had a look at some of the beauty and splendor of the island of Maui, it's time to head over to Molokai. 8 nautical miles of water, known as the Pailolo Channel, separate the two islands. We'll be arriving on the northeasternmost tip of the island of Molokai, known as Halawa Valley. Halawa means curve, so named for the very distinct curve. This is a series of rocks known as Moku Ho'oniki Island. The island is the guardian to the Halawa Valley. The island of Molokai is 38 miles long, 10 miles wide at its furthest point. The island is the 5th largest in the chain and is made up of 3 shield volcanoes. The island of Molokai is known now as the Friendly Isle because of the disposition of the people living there, but it was once known as the Lonely Isle. That's because the kahunas, or the Hawaiian high priests, live here. They're very powerful and very feared people, so consequently natives traveling between the islands gave the island of Molokai a very wide berth. We're headed back into the Halawa Valley to take a look at Mo'oula Falls. There are 6 waterfalls situated back here, and like the East Maui waterfalls, these are all fed from rain. The lighter green trees that you can see here in the valley is a tree known as the kukui. Now, the kukui nut is sometimes called the candle nut. The nut has a very high oil content to it, and the Hawaiians used to use it for lighting. They take the nut and string it on the spine of a coconut leaf, just like you'd make a shish kebab, and then light them up, and you got Mother Nature's homemade candles. Fortunately, this didn't last very long, so they eventually learned to extract the oil from the nut and to use it in stone lamps. This is probably the most startling feature of the north shore of the island of Molokai, the world's tallest sea cliffs, and most notable in Molokai is the Kalapapa Peninsula here, noted for the leper colony and Father Damien. We'll be taking one quick last look at the northern sea cliffs of the island of Molokai on our way back to Maui. On behalf of everyone here at Alex Air, we thank you for sharing your escape to paradise with us. And when you come back to Maui once again, we'd like to show you more of the beauty that is available here. And a reminder, we also have for sale t-shirts, tank tops, and Alex Air baseball caps.